branding guys we worked with described it as like the special wrongness of the word Grubby, because we still get people on like Instagram ads and stuff being like, can't believe you called the company Grubby, like it's so weird, it's food, like why are you calling it that, it means dirty, did you not know? You know, it's like, yes, we do know.
Do you have a story at all of like in the early days where you thought really made a massive mistake?
There's a few mistakes. I mean, one that springs to mind is it's really hard to forecast. I mean, that's like what all the recipe kits have spent a lot of money on over the years, is getting that right. Long story short, when it comes to recipe kits, the operational side is a bloody nightmare.
And this might be a really silly question because you were just talking about teams then, and I was thinking, do you have a sales team?
I think we did that for about 6 months or something, and we got to a point with the packing, it was just absolute chaos, to be honest. But there is like so many hacks that people just don't know about, that's what we try and do with the meals. It's like, how can we make these tasty but also really simple?
I'm really interested in like the loyalty that you have with customers. How does retention work?
Yeah, I mean, retention is basically all we ever talk about. Something we found out recently was that customers are often considering us for more than 6 months before they make a purchase. They've heard about us and they think about us for like 6 months, you know, before they actually go, right, I am going to spend my money on this product.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to give a shout out to a special sponsor, Sam Lawrence Recruitment. We all know that finding the right people or the right job can feel really overwhelming, and that's exactly where Sam comes in. He really just gets it. It's not just about ticking boxes, it's about connecting the right people with the right opportunities. He takes the time to understand you and exactly what you're looking for, whether you're building a team or taking that next career leap. So definitely get in touch. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. At Getting to Grow, I believe that growth starts with connection. And that's where our sponsor, We Are All Marketing, comes in. I'm super excited to be partnering with Vic and the team over at We Are All Marketing. They're not just a marketing agency, they're storytellers, strategists, and your biggest advocates. Whether you're building a brand, launching a product, or strengthening your digital presence, We Are All Marketing helps you turn ideas into impact. With a personalised, results-driven approach, they ensure your vision reaches the right audience in the right way. Ready to grow your business? Visit weareallmarketing.com and see how they can help you thrive. Getting to Grow is also brought to you by the Coconut Collab. And full disclosure, as I'm sure most of you are aware, I work there, so I know how much love goes into everything that we make. We're all about creating delicious, dairy-free, plant-based treats that do not compromise on taste. From our creamy yogurts to our indulgent desserts, everything's made with coconuts and a whole lot of care. If you're looking for something naturally good but seriously tasty, and my favourite is just our natural coconut yogurt, I have it most mornings with granola and lots of honey. Trust me, you're going to absolutely love it. Welcome back to another episode of Getting to Grow, and on this week's episode I have Martin-Holden, who is the founder of Grubby, the amazing plant-based meal delivery kit, which I've got down here, so I'll be showing everybody a little bit later on. But welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So lovely to have you on. I actually first heard about Grubby, I think, was back when one of your old employees got in touch with me about coconut yogurt, and then when I met my current boyfriend, he also said, oh my gosh, I've been using Grubby, like I've been having it for ages, and I was like, yeah, you do, and then I saw it coming. So I've got to know it a lot more recently.
Yeah.
So, Martin, what were you doing before Grubby?
So before Grubby, well, I mean, way back, if I go back to when I was like 16, I started as a chef, sort of part-time. I did a school work experience in a French kitchen. It's quite a sort of stressful environment. I remember little old me at like 16 kind of walking into this like pretty crazy environment in the kitchen, but something about the sort of food sector and that buzz of a service like really got me hooked. And yeah, I've sort of been in hospitality and food ever since. I'd done various sort of jobs before Grubby, but mostly in kind of hotels, restaurants, food service. But the one just before Grubby was with a company called Baxter Story, who you actually probably know, Club. So I was a sales guy for them. So we were pitching for business of restaurants and cafes in large corporate buildings, basically. So, and that's kind of where Grubby started, was the idea of there's nothing for people to take home when they've left work. So the original idea was a delivery to offices where you could grab the recipe kit out of a smart fridge, and you'd scan a QR code, and off you go and cook dinner. So that was where it began.
Oh my gosh! How come you didn't do that?
Well, COVID. So, I mean, it was
Of course,
yeah, we got
that would be a bit of a
we
block
got
for that one.
completely scuppered. But yeah, the first iteration of it was literally a set of wooden shelves, which funnily enough we're currently trying to sell because we're moving office.
So if anybody wants some wooden
If
shelves,
anyone wants wooden shelves, then
get
your hands on them. But yeah, we literally had 7 wooden shelves with an iZettle basically taped to the side of it, and a big screen which we literally bolted onto it, where you could tap the screen, scan your QR code, scan the iZettle, grab a bag, and off you go. And that was how it began. Then we did a smart fridge, and then COVID came along. That all went P-tong, and yeah, ended up getting into direct-to-consumer subscription business, which was never the intention. So,
would you bring back the fridge? I really like that idea. I can so see that working.
I think, I mean, part of me does want to at some point. Part of me also is like that sort of wanting to stay focused on one thing and spreading yourself too thin with like more ideas. But yeah, I mean, I still believe it's a good idea. But I also think that, is there enough people like in corporate buildings these days, 5 days a week, like compared to what it was? I mean, it's coming back, but it's still not. It's just not at the same level as where it used to be. So, yeah, right now, no, but never say never.
Yeah, it could be like a thing that you like don't put too much effort into, in the sense of like, oh, it's a nice to have on the side. Like you could trial it and then because I just think there are so many times I'm in the office where I'm like, I can't bother to go to Sainsbury's if something was just there, but I still want to do my own cooking.
Yeah. They do like, I mean, sort of foods, not recipe kits, but you know, ready meal versions of it in other countries. I think like Sweden and Denmark, and I think when I was originally looking into it, they do quite a bit of that in offices, where you can sort of grab snack pots out of fridges and whatnot. So it does exist as like a technology, but we sort of thought, why not have that at the end of the working day? So yeah.
So COVID then hit, and you had to kind of move everything online, and direct to the customer's house.
Yep.
How did that transition then happen?
I mean, it wasn't fun. It was. I mean, it was about. So I'd been working on Grubby at that point for about a year, probably, developing the recipes. I'd quit my job with no real plan, to be honest. I had a bit of a sort of. I mean, to be honest, the only way I can describe it is that it was like a niggling feeling that just wouldn't go away, and it was just, I've got to do this. But yeah, I mean, COVID itself, when that hit, I moved back to my parents, and sort of the next day I kind of woke up like, you know, it was the day of Boris making the announcement that I went back, and that evening I remember sat there like watching the news, and just with mum and dad just being like, oh shit, like this is not a good situation. Business is basically a bit screwed, and now not in London, like how am I going to do this? So anyway, very quickly realised that COVID wasn't going away, and actually my mate Paul had just come back from travelling. He'd been away for 7 days, was supposed to go for a year. He came back 7 days later, he was like, how's things, mate? I was like, well, not great, business is a bit screwed. I said, but do you want to help me build a website? Because I'm going to try, you know, set it up as a direct subscription business, and we'd worked together before. So bodged together this website in, you know, that first lockdown, when it was like scorching in the day, but we were like busying ourselves on this website. I then decided to do this NHS deliveries thing where we raised money on Just Giving, started delivering the kits to hospitals in London. I was driving down from the Midlands like twice a week. Dad hated it because he was like, you're going to go and catch COVID down there, blah, blah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But anyway, it didn't. And yeah, we did like several packing days, delivered like over 1,000 meals to the NHS. But what we did was put a little feedback card in each one, being like, obviously it's free, but it'd be great if you could just give us a bit of feedback. So it was a massive feedback loop of a load of people who tried Grubby for the first time, which helped us iterate on those first recipes in actually a really cheap way. And it was great PR. So that's how it started. And then moved back down to London, I think about 6 weeks later. And first employee, Songy, she was helping me pack. So we were teaspooning spice blends. We were bagging all the leafy greens.
Sonny's still with you?
She's actually not, like recently left.
Okay, because
she went away to go travelling, and now she's working for a charity company. But yeah, no, she was with us for 4 years, and she was great. Yeah. And you probably had contact with her as well.
Yeah, that's
for the
how
coconut,
she got in touch with me the first time about coconut yogurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but no, yeah. So we sort of would pack together in the early days. We delivered. It basically started both of us on bikes with a veg crate strapped to the front of it, and then I would take my Polo. She would cycle with a big like Amazon, thing on the back of the bike to fill with the bags, and we just did like a combination of that, and I'd have a taped to the dashboard. I'd have the spreadsheet of the customers I had to deliver to with their addresses.
Yeah.
And then I'd set up Google Maps to like add stops for all the different addresses, and that was literally what it was to begin with. And we sort of, I think we did that for about 6 months or something, and we got to a point with the packing. It was just absolute chaos, to be honest. Like
I can imagine.
I mean, basically, the long story short, when it comes to recipe kits, the operational side is a bloody nightmare, and as soon as you start adding choice, you think that in a bag you've got 12, 14 ingredients. You times that by the number of recipes you put on a weekly basis. You times that by people getting 2 recipes, 3 recipes, 4 recipes, 5 recipes. And suddenly you've got this like it's just, if you have a pin code, it's like the different variations of that are infinite.
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it.
Suddenly you've just got a really, really technical, we deal with like 150 SKUs plus a week, it's complicated. So then we basically had to find a more streamlined way to pack. Actually, one of the veg suppliers we were working with at the time, Watts Farm, they were doing some overflow packing work for HelloFresh, because HelloFresh were obviously, we didn't catch that COVID wave, really, unfortunately.
Oh,
it was so annoying.
Yeah.
But obviously, like the Mindful Chefs, the Gustos, the HelloFreshes, they were just like exploding, absolutely exploding. So like Watts Farm were doing some overflow packing work, and they were like, well, we've got, we're literally doing it now, so just like come in and we'll just pack your kits for you. And as soon as you said that, it was like, I just like seen the light. It was just amazing, because we couldn't do it any longer. It was just getting too big at that point.
Yeah, of course.
And so yeah, we.
And how many customers did you have at that point before when you were like, this is unsustainable?
I actually don't know. I'm gonna say it was probably like 150, a couple of hundred, something like that, maybe.
It's a lot of meals that you're making, and also because I was looking on your website the other day for obviously the box that I've ordered, that you very kindly have organised for me.
Yeah.
But how there's choice, and then like the cut-off days, so like you still allow your customers to kind of like make some edits.
Yeah.
And what that then does is then you kind of wait until like the nth hour to be like, right, go. That's what they've finished. Yeah. Which can then be so like.
It's really hard to forecast. I mean, that's like what all the recipe kits, have spent a lot of money on over the years, is getting that right. Ultimately, it's you can't really be. Very, very technical and difficult to be, and cause a lot of wastage if you wanted to be like the next Amazon, where it was like you could order on the day, because you're getting fresh ingredients in that you want to get them as fresh as you possibly can, straight from the field. But if you allow people to do that like really close to the deadline, it's just so hard to get that accurate and forecast correct. So like for us, we've sort of taken the decision that, if customers like it, they're willing to get their order sorted a couple of days before they get their box, and then that means we can get them fresh produce. It means we're not going to waste a load of veg, which is super important to people, because yes, recipe kits are inherently very sustainable because the stuff that you're using is the exact quantities and all the rest.
Very little waste.
But behind the scenes, obviously there is a degree of waste. So if you start then reducing those cut-offs, you cause more of that. So yeah.
Yeah. The intricacies of it are quite pernickety and like intense at times. Like there's so many moving parts and cogs that need to kind of like work to make it. Do you have a story at all of like in the early days where you thought, or like you really made a massive mistake?
There's a few mistakes. I mean, one that springs to mind is I remember we got a black cab with about 150 cauliflowers in it from Covent Garden Market, because we thought these cauliflowers were going to arrive. They didn't, and we had to get all the deliveries out. We had everything packed, like obviously everything goes off so quickly, and we literally got this black cab to come and deliver a load of cauliflowers. And he arrived and he was like, what's this, mate? We're like,
Yeah.
sorry, just had to get them here.
Yeah, and also reveal what the hell they want with that many cauliflowers.
Yeah. So a few like weird ones like that, and I mean when we used the bikes in the early days, because we transitioned to using pedal me, to deliver the boxes, and because we deliver by bike, and we knew that was going to be a sustainable way to deliver, and obviously in the winter those bikes they weren't particularly well protected, and initially we didn't even have boxes, right? So stupid me at that point. The smart fridge idea was that you'd have bags, and so obviously to then do that in D2C, there's a little thing called rain that if you're delivering bags, but we hadn't got the boxes in time, so we started out delivering on these bikes with these bags, and then lo and behold, one of the delivery days absolutely shelled it down with rain, and literally the bags got completely and utterly soaked. So that was also a bit of a disaster, and then we were like, we need to get these boxes, and quickly.
Oh my god, yeah.
So
And why plant-based? Obviously, like, there's a massive movement, and people are eating more plant-based. There's the kind of rise of flexitarian, but why are you plant-based?
I'm not. So always very open about that. I eat, obviously a lot of grubby, but probably 4 or 5 days a week plant-based, and the idea for grubby came about because I was eating less meat, but found it really difficult to actually. I was sort of not properly trained as a chef, but I was a chef when I was younger, so I know my way around a kitchen, and like. I was cooking and I was thinking, why is this so difficult? Like, I don't actually know what I'm doing with plant-based ingredients. Like, I really did feel quite lost. And I was like, if I'm lost as somebody who can, cook, basically, then most other people are going to be in the same situation. Like, they might want to reduce their meat intake, but the reality is, you can do that pretty well in restaurants. Like, you can eat out pretty well plant-based now. You can get a good ready meal, whatever. But, like, 90% of people in the UK still cook at home. Like the meals that are cooked in the UK, 90% are still cooked at home, and people need to know like how to cook that stuff if they're really going to eat more plant-based. So that was like the challenge for us, is like, how can we get people cooking plant-based and it actually tastes really, really good, and these weird ingredients that you have to get by the bucket load, like nutritional yeast or whatever. You're like, do I really want that in my cupboard for 6 months just sitting there? No. So then I'd seen recipe kits that are out there already, and thought, well, there's nothing plant-based out there. Like there is a real gap in this market. They are not doing this well. I tried, their plant-based options, and I'm actually still amazed that the others maybe haven't come on as much as I thought they would in plant-based, and maybe don't. There's not that many options. Still, we have the most plant-based choice on the market when it comes to recipe kits. So that was always the vision, was just to make it super easy, super tasty for people to cook plant-based at home.
Yeah, because I think it is really interesting, especially with, like, if we go back about 5 years ago when, plant-based meat especially, was everywhere. Like, it was such a crowded market. This was partnering with every single restaurant, in the UK, and then you had like the Whopper that came out with Burger King, and it's just gone a bit like recently. Like, it has. I think the rise of ultra processed food has kind of probably hurt that trend a bit, but I really didn't. I didn't think that would be like. I don't think it is a fad, but there was a bit of a faddiness around it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm really surprised at the dip.
Yeah, I am too. I think that, like, ultimately with lots of things like that, like when you get, whether you call it a fad, craze, whatever, people flood the market, and investment was just like, people just throwing money at these plant-based meat companies, and they're raising stupid amounts, and that was getting them to grow like quite irresponsibly, because if you've got 60 million or something, then investors are sort of essentially making you spend it because they want you to grow as fast as you possibly can. What does that do to the quality of the products? It's questionable. So you've got some companies that have obviously now left the market, and the reality is, I think for most of them was because their products weren't as good. And like, I think where you got to now with, particularly in plant-based meat, it's like the people that are still there are the ones that have genuinely good, tasty products. This being a prime example of that. Like, so good. I really rate them. And that is, I think, what happened. And plant-based is not like a, we obviously try and avoid using the word vegan.
I never use that word ever.
It's like,
especially at Coconut Crab as well. We never say we're vegan.
Yeah. We use plant-based all the time. I mean, SEO is about the only sort of thing that we really use vegan for to get the search term accuracy. But, I think that is the problem. There is still a little bit of a stigma around eating plant-based, and this sort of myth that you can't get enough protein and the nutritionals that you need from a plant-based diet. It's just complete nonsense. So yeah, we're trying to sort of bust those, kind of myths around plant-based and make it more sort of inclusive, I guess. And one of our recipe development team, he is flexitarian as well. And I think, like, even for me, when I was developing the recipes at the start, like, I was always trying to come at it from, this has just got to be a tasty meal in its own right. Like, regardless of it being plant-based, if this doesn't taste good, that's literally all that matters. And the portion sizes was another thing. It's like, plant-based food doesn't fill you up, apparently. It's like, okay, we're going to give people decent sized portions.
Yeah.
We will not skimp on portion size. And I found that with other recipe kits actually at the time, is that the portion sizes were, maybe it's just because I eat a lot, but I do find when it's just not enough there, you're like, what? This is not a full meal. So that
I
was
also
something
think
we
like
wanted to do.
ingredients have to speak for themselves. I think this is where we, as like even in the UK, don't do a very good job at all. Like, I was recently in Madrid, and a lot of their kind of meals are focused around just the vegetable or like the meat, for example. Whereas we, of course, there are places in Spain that are adding lots of additives, etc. But generally speaking, Mediterranean diet is quite like, lots of olive oil, some really good salt, it's grilled, and the flavours just speak for themselves. I think, in the UK, I guess we're probably a little bit behind in the sense that, like, to make a carrot taste good, there's probably a lot more we've got to do to it. It's like, people know what steak tastes like. Yeah. Like, you flash fry it, whatever they do in the restaurants, and then it's out.
It's the combinations of, like, we were brought up on, meat, veg, a bit of sauce, a carb, and that's like how you put a meal together. And it isn't as straightforward with plant-based. There is more you have to do, but there is like so many hacks that people just don't know about. That's what we try and do with the meals. Is like, how can we make these tasty but also really simple? And initially, I didn't get that right. Like, that's why I'm not involved in recipe development anymore. But I did like the first 30 recipes or so. And now, we know that speed is a critical factor for people,
How long is my pasta going to take me to?
Good question. What have you got? The Sicilian, the Sicilian aubergine tagliatelle.
Let's get out what we're talking about.
Yeah, that dish is actually one of the 30. And I didn't know that was in the bag, by the way, genuinely. But that's one of the 30. It's probably been iterated on since, but it's one of the few that's survived. I have this ongoing thing with recipe development that most of my original recipes have been ousted from the roster, and that's one that stood the test of time.
And the portion does look healthy.
It's a big portion. You'll get a lot.
So we've got Sicilian aubergine linguine. It's 30 minutes apparently. Yeah. And it serves 2.
I think you'll get it done in less than 30 minutes.
Do you think?
I bagged it. Yeah.
So it all comes in. To be fair, this is great because the portion size is just done. Yeah. Like, I don't need to think about it. Chop that up. Put that in. We've got some lovely passata. We've got some really nice olives. Oh, Belazou, fantastic.
Yeah, I do love Belazou.
This pillow pack, bane of my life.
Is that? No, that's the sun-dried tomato
paste.
Yeah.
Aubergine, and then little milk, little Italian herbs and spices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how it comes just all like done for you, like all prepped and done. It's funny because I love cooking. Yeah. So I've always been a bit like, do they take the fun out of it for me? Like, I want to go into the shop and I don't. But actually, I always think I have the time and I never do. Yeah. So what happens after a day's work? I get home or I work from home and I'm just like, I don't want to go out. Whereas like, I can still have something exciting that I might not cook myself. Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing like that I've obviously I use the product all the time.
Do you get some discount being a founder at all?
Possibly. I do actually still love using the product. Like, it's not that I'm doing it because, I mean, obviously do it because I want to keep testing the recipes and, be the first with like new recipes to, check that the methods are good and that sort of thing. We still have like proper Slack channel for all of that. Like I'm constantly writing on that from the recipes I cook. But at the same time, I do just still get a real satisfaction and enjoyment out of using the product. And it is just part of my week. Like, that's how I cook now. And it is quite weird that I don't cook much else aside from Grubby now. Which may be something I've only recently realised.
Yeah.
It's like I've become like that's the way I do my cooking.
Yeah.
But
which is
yeah.
if you're getting it, and also to keep testing your recipes and being a consumer as well. And I'm just like, we have the same in the Coconut Collaborative office. Most Wednesdays we're trialing the latest production of every single product. So making sure that we're really constantly thinking about how the consumer's receiving it and what they're tasting.
Mm-hmm.
But why Grubby? It's like quite fun. It's a memorable name.
Yeah, down the sleeve.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Grubby was, the idea was, the branding guys that we worked with described it as like the special wrongness of the word Grubby. Because we still get people on like Instagram ads and stuff being like, can't believe you called the company Grubby, like it's so weird, it's food, like why are you calling it that? It means dirty, did you not know? It's like, yes, we do know.
Really, I didn't think of that.
Yeah. But no, the idea was like, when you're in the kitchen, it's quite a messy experience, like fresh veg straight from the grounds, like
that's what I thought.
Grubby hands,
that's
like
where
gardening, and like naturally, like the kitchen experience is a bit messy, but like all the branding was deliberately really clean, and like quite black and white, very black and white. So that was like the idea behind it really, and just to have a bit of fun with it and be like attention grabbing and people will remember the name. It's not something you forget that easily. So that was kind of where it came about.
And in terms of sustainability and your kind of stance on that, how do you differentiate yourself from other meal delivery kits?
Yeah, sustainability is like something that I didn't know loads about it before like starting Grubby, and obviously we're a B Corp now, and really do think about what we're doing from a logistics point of view, from packaging to like the whole supply chain. I suppose like one thing we do that's slightly different is we did like a full carbon analysis on all of our recipes and every new recipe that comes out, and that like tracks the ingredients that are in those recipes, where they've come from, and therefore how it stacks up against its closest meat equivalent meal. So if you're having like a mushroom stroganoff, it will compare that to a beef stroganoff, and it will tell you the exact amount of carbon that has been saved by you not choosing a beef stroganoff and going with a Grubby mushroom stroganoff.
Okay.
And it then equates that to like, over time when you've had like 20 boxes, it shows you like what that would be in like flights or, that type of stuff. So it's like, you can digest it and it's easy to understand. And that for me has actually been like a really interesting project that we did. And just to try and make it a bit more sort of user friendly, as like, this is actually what you're saving, like what you're doing by getting Grubby. So there's a bit of a feel good factor to it as well. We also donate a meal to a child in poverty, sort of slightly separate to sustainability, obviously more of an ethical thing, but we've worked with a charity called One More Child since very early on, and have always felt quite passionately about that. I do like an annual cycle with the founder of One More Child, like that's a cool thing to be able to do because we feel like we're sort of giving back as well. Packaging wise, we really try and reduce the amount of plastic that we're using. It's unfortunately, like even as you see in the bags, like there is things that require plastic, and still plastic does do a good job at certain things. Like we've tried all sorts of materials on stuff like spinach that it sucks a lot of the moisture out when it's compostable, and it can wilt the veg and stuff like that. So we've tried our best to reduce plastic. The pods are biodegradable, so all the things you get in the spice blends and all that kind of stuff, they're biodegradable. So there's things within the packaging that we're trying to address still, that's a big area for us as well.
It's really hard. So many brands have like a problem with plastic because you're right, it's like one of the best ways still to carry freshness.
There's no denying it.
To keep it like as consumers want it, but it's funny, like I'm still so undecided on the whole sustainability piece from a customer point of view. Like I know they want the brands to be doing it. Yeah. But I don't know, and I'm still trying to figure this out myself, how invested consumers actually are when they're in the supermarket. I know they want to see the transparency, they want to hear the brand doing it. Yeah. But if it's really expensive versus something that's cheaper, what sways them. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, I do sort of agree with that, although something that came up recently, actually, I went to like a founder breakfast thing, and we were talking about the whole B Corp movement and whatnot. And there is like quite a lot of evidence now that says that people who are eco-conscious generally have a higher spending power.
Of course, yeah.
So, you know, that side of it, you know, they're probably better retained as a customer because they are like of an eco-conscious mindset.
Definitely.
Whether, as you say, whether in a supermarket somebody cares, you know, about particular sustainability credentials is probably still debatable.
It's really hard to tell.
But for sure there is people that care. I mean, you know, yeah.
As a founder, what's been really rewarding?
I mean, for me, like I've never been like really money driven, and I think I quit my last job as a sales guy, which probably would have had reasonable earning potential, and like I do vividly remember an old boss coming into a room, sort of saying, if anybody in this room is not driven by money, solely driven by money, put your hand up. And everyone was too shit scared to put their hand up, obviously. But I always look back at that and I think, no, that's not what I'm driven by. And that was actually like a big part of me eventually quitting and being deciding that my idea was a good one and to leave. And but yeah, I mean, back to your sort of question, like that was like definitely part of the motivation. But then actually, what's probably been like surprising is the what the team has done, and like seeing how the team has evolved and developed, and like what they've like built is like really satisfying. And that's probably the thing that motivates me the most is like people coming together of like who are all just such different people, you know. People who are in tech are very different to people who are in marketing, to very different to people in operations, and like merging people together, I find that like quite satisfying of like, yeah, people working on something together and building something together.
And this might be a really silly question because you were just talking about teams then, and I was thinking, do you have a sales team?
So we have a marketing team. It's a good question. We had a sales team. So we used to do quite a lot of face-to-face sort of direct sales. Okay. So people at train stations, tube stations, events, that kind of stuff. Because the way I started Grubby was when we weren't delivering in those early days, I would go and knock doors. So I would go along the street, Songy would do the same. We would say, here's a flyer, get them into conversation, and then sign people up. During COVID, it wasn't. Some people absolutely hated it. Obviously, we got kicked out of a few big blocks of flats and stuff. But that's how it started, and then we did build a sales team through an agency of about 100 people. That's when we were growing very, very fast, and we'd had quite a bit of investment. What we found was that channel for us long term, like it wasn't the best fit. We still have customers obviously from that channel, but the retention wasn't as good as it maybe would be on a channel where it's a more considered purchase, like an ad that you've seen multiple times and you've considered. I mean, something we found out recently was that customers are often considering us for more than 6 months before they make the purchase. So they've heard about us and they think about us for like, not think about us all the time, but they're thinking about us for 6 months, before they actually go, right, I am going to spend my money on this product. But yeah, we did have a sales team. Now we don't. Cutting a long story short, we stopped working with them and we reduced that channel down. But yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking like you're not directly doing sales, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then customer retention, is that quite a tough gig after first 3 boxes? Just because I'm thinking of the big, the HelloFresh and the Gusto, they're so good with their like initial discounts, 60% off your first, and then it's 30, and then it's 30, and then you might get 25% because you decide to leave and they go, oh no, have one more discount, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in like the loyalty that you have with customers. Like, are they loyal after their first 2 boxes, 3 boxes? Do you add little prezzies in to be like, on your 5th box to keep them going? How does retention work?
Yeah, I mean, retention is basically all we ever talk about.
Okay.
It's, that is the crux of a subscription business. If you don't retain people, you're screwed. And you obviously reference like some of the competitors of some of the wild discounts that they're offering, and to get people into that habit. I mean, what's happened there is there's two of them who are just competing on price, and it's almost like they've backed themselves into a corner because they both have to do that almost to like stay competitive with each other. So if one of them wasn't doing that, the other one definitely wouldn't be. So there's a sort of, it's a strange one with the discounts that are happening there. But and we can't really, to be frank, we can't really compete with those kind of like deep pocket discounts. But we have found that phasing discounts over a series of weeks is a good way to do it, because it's all about getting people into that habit of using the products and experiencing the products. Like if they try it once and they have, for whatever reason, just not as good an experience as we'd like them to have, for example, they haven't chosen the recipes that quite work for them or something like that, and they're just not big fans, then at least you've got them on to try that second, third box, because they think, oh, you know what, I've got a discount, let's give it a go again. So, but yeah, retention is a challenge. Our retention is good. We have, tons of people who use the products all the time. I think back to some of the early stage customers who are still like with us now, and they've ordered, I think top customers is 175, possibly 200 boxes now, which is basically a box every week for like.
Do you know them now?
4 years.
Have you emailed them as the founder and like? Hey.
Yeah. I've messaged several people who like loyal customers and things, and one that really stands out is an early stage customer who me and Songy delivered that first box to. Literally was the first box, and bags actually. There's a picture of us handing over the bags to them, and they're still customers today. They also invested in the crowd rounds.
Oh wow!
They phoned me up to ask about the investment because they'd never done that sort of thing before, and I basically was trying to put them off. I was like, I almost didn't want them to. It just felt too like sort of close to home kind of thing. But yeah, they've been amazing customers throughout, and lots of others like that, which is what sort of I guess keeps you motivated as well.
I was going to say,
having
do you have
those
any
people
other?
that
Do you have any other stories of where you really remember, or did someone email in that like changed the way you thought about a recipe or anything like that?
One particular review that I always think back to, like I just find it really funny, is like this bloke who's like he described himself as a carnivorous hulk of a bloke that like was obsessed with the gym.
Okay.
And basically was like a massive meat eater, like meathead, and he was like, honestly, my wife got me this Grubby box, and I was like, I can't believe we've got this kind of thing, and then he just has eaten it ever since, like.
Okay.
And that is so satisfying to sort of think somebody who is meat obsessed, and then they're like, there's this product that comes into their life, and they just like reduce their meat intake as a result of it, and they love it. So yeah, that was it. That was a good one.
And have you ever had any negative like reviews that you've then turned into positive ones because they've had like a bad experience or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, obviously couriers are a real challenge, like for any
but
subscription
not even with
business.
food, like I get parcels delivered all the time, and I'm like, oh, that is awfully like damaged, and it's not the company's fault. They're using couriers.
Yeah, there was one guy I remember emailed to say to customer service, "Can I speak to the Muppet who's in charge?" And he ranted about, I think he had like a late delivery or something, and it had happened once or twice. And so I said to Matilda, I was like, I'll email this customer, and I just said, hey, this is Martin, I'm the Muppet that's in charge.
Yeah.
And that's how I started the email, and then obviously sorted his problem out, and and he came back and he was like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And just like immediately retracted everything he'd said. And then he's I've looked, and he's still a customer now as well. So those sorts of things like can go a long way if you can. Obviously you can't spend all your time on customer service, but doing it occasionally is definitely helpful.
But that's where small businesses have such an edge over big. Like we can be agile and reply to like that one individual customer that did email in, and then they feel really special, and then go, oh crap, I'm not just like a number to them. Like I'm a person and I'm a customer, and like they care about it. Whereas if they emailed into the likes of, I don't know, Unilever, you're never gonna get that kind of like service, and people love service. So
100%.
in the You're at the stage now where you've got your operations a lot more sorted out than when you were delivering door to door.
Just a bit.
Where do you see like the future of Grubby going? I'm an advocate for these fridges. I've got to have them. I'm going to tell everyone about this because it's such a good idea. Literally, there needs to be that.
Yeah.
What's next for you guys? Do you think you'd ever incorporate meat, or is it like just your core?
No, meat's never gonna be part of Grubby. I've said it. It's on a podcast.
There you go.
No, but like I mean, obviously we use meat alternatives, and to be honest, it was like the original thing was that it was always going to be all about the veg, and it still is probably about 80% like veg and 20% meat alternative recipes. Obviously, they've got veg in them as well, but you know what I mean. And yeah, like meat alternatives, like it's interesting. Like obviously, seeing the decline slightly of that industry, but actually the appetite within Grubby is super high. Like people love those recipes, which is there's a lot of talk about that sector being like on the decline, and actually we see it the opposite, is that people are demanding them more. But
I think there's probably a partnership piece in there as well. So like I've just seen your recent collab with Bosch. Which that creates excitement within the box, and if you are collaborating with a plant-based meat alternative that people know and have heard of and are doing cool stuff in the industry, it then has I want to try it.
Yeah, for sure. And then I mean, you were saying about the future as well. I sort of went off on a bit of a rant, but collabs is like definitely something we want to do a lot more of. Like the most recent one was Leon, and we've had a long-standing relationship now with Bosch, as you said, which have been really effective. And we do want to do more kind of high-profile restaurant collaborations, and we've got a few in the pipeline for next year. So yeah, lots of stuff like that happening. But the other thing which has just happened is that we're bringing out a recipe book.
That's so exciting.
So that's also something which I didn't think we'd ever necessarily do, but sort of waiting to see what the reaction is going to be like. But that's out there now. And
how many recipes?
There's it's over 60, and then there's quite a few sort of hacky recipes it's like pestos and sauces and condiments and
lovely.
We sort of broke it down into like fake away and then like indulgent and healthy recipes. Healthy being at the back, because we were like, you know what, people love healthy recipes, but they obviously more love the fake away stuff that we do.
And if I'm cooking for myself on like a Friday night, or I've got friends over, and that's tend to when I pick up a recipe book really, because if it's Tuesday or Wednesday I'm just quick cooking, I tend not to. You don't mind having the more indulgent or the few extra calories, whatever, here and there, because it's Friday night and you've got your mates over, and that's what you want to open first, or not your salad on a Friday night.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what the book is, was also just about hammering home the trying to get over those misconceptions about plant-based and it not tasting good, and you still being able to have those like naughty, indulgent dinners that are like super quick. So that's the recipe book is all about quick recipes that taste good. That's it. And I do genuinely think the recipes in there are things that people will make over and over again. And I suppose what's different about it is a lot of recipe books that I put out there often are ghost written. So a lot of celebrity chefs have writers that they sort of approve the content that goes into the books. They don't necessarily have that much of a say in it. The recipes aren't that well tested, which was a shock to me when I sort of heard. I mean, we now work with a few freelancers on the shoots and stuff, and so they write for these chefs. Whereas our recipe book, these recipes have been tried, tested, not just by me and the recipe development team, but by like thousands of customers who have eaten them, fed back. We've edited it, we've changed the method. Every single week that recipe goes out, things are getting tweaked. So the recipes in that book are genuinely stuff that's been tried and tested tons and tons of times. So yeah, hopefully it goes all right.
I'm excited to see it. And what is your favourite recipe that you've created to date?
You got me on the spot there. I like miso generally. And there's one which is like miso mushrooms with like an Asian guac with like ginger and chili through the avocado, chips, homemade chips, and like a slaw as well.
Oh yeah.
And it just like works really well. So you got like the hot juicy mushrooms with the slaw and the guac. And
If you were to describe like Grubby as a cocktail,
yeah,
what cocktail would you be?
that's pretty hard. I mean, we'd have to have like Grubby in the title. You can tell I haven't read through the questions before we started. I mean, I quite like rum, so it'd probably be something fruity with
Bit
rum
bold
in it.
as well. I feel
Yeah,
like
like pretty.
you got bold flavours in your recipes.
It'd be pretty punchy. Yeah, some rum based cocktail. I can't think of them off the top of my head.
Yeah.
You've got me there, stumped.
And as a founder as well, how do you personally stay like motivated?
Yeah, I mean, I think now it's been going for 4.5, almost 5 years. Like, it is definitely a challenge to like remain motivated the whole time. And I mean, particularly in the early days, like I definitely just burnt out. I was working every single weekend, like for probably about 18 months. I did do 7 days a week, and it's sort of like glorified this thing of founders are supposed to like run themselves into the ground, and that's just the only way you can succeed. And I think over time I've definitely realised that like you've got to value your rest, and you've got to rest properly. And not having like working weekends is just stupid. Like it's just if you can avoid it, absolutely avoid it, because you will eventually just burn out. And I think that would be sort of my advice to any other founder is, you might have to go through a spell of it, but don't let that spell get so out of control that it becomes more than a year or something, or probably even less than a year, that you're working like that, because it's not sustainable. And I think for me now, like getting good rest, going on holiday, like doing the things you want to do with your friends, like I'm obviously into my sport and keep fit and stuff, and playing hockey at the weekends is big for me. Just going out on runs and stuff like that, like that's what keeps me energized.
Definitely.
For sure.
I think you have to have like the things that keep you going, because otherwise if you're just constantly like doing stuff that you don't find interesting or that's not motivating you on the side of your day to day, it's like you're really hard. You've got to put time in for you.
Yeah.
I think you're right, it's so glorified, the whole like, keep going,
being up at like 5 in the morning or whatever, it's just not necessary to like operate like that, I don't think.
Yeah. It's also, you're right, you come to a halt, like it's impossible, you can't keep going at that that pace, it just doesn't work. Your body just like gives up anyway and goes, no, can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of common misconceptions about plant-based eating that you'd like to clear up?
I mean, there's a lot. I've probably covered like a few. The whole it not filling you up being one is nonsense. Like we definitely do big portion size. It not having enough protein, that's also a complete nonsense. Like you can get tons of protein in a plant-based meal. Sometimes like more than you get from a steak or whatever. And it not being like possible to eat plant-based regularly and it not be good for you kind of thing. That's also just not true. So for me they're probably the misconceptions I talk about. And I think your point about if you're a cook, then recipe kits aren't for you. That to me is something we've got to work harder at breaking down. It's like the people who enjoy cooking should still be able to get Grubby and enjoy Grubby and, expand their recipe repertoire,
Definitely.
But I do think that is not uncommon, like what you said earlier about that. That's something that we need to work harder on those people because they're good cooks, they want to cook, so why aren't we getting to those people who think the recipe kits aren't for them?
Definitely. I don't know why. I think... Why not? I'm trying to think.
It's probably like the creativity. I think maybe the creativity side of it maybe takes out a little bit of that, but
but you get the creativity, because I wouldn't think to do that type of pasta for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
So I don't. It's funny. I'm not quite sure what the actual reasoning behind it would really be. It's probably just I need to give it a go and trial it, and then be like, oh, that was rubbish what I just said, because it doesn't compute. But
hopefully.
If you've got one piece of advice for a founder just starting out listening to this, thinking, I like the idea of maybe doing more of a service model type business versus an actual kind of finished good product that they can pick up and eat there and then, what would you say would be your one biggest piece of advice?
I think ultimately, being a founder is not for everyone, and it's also like, you know, there's some people that maybe see it as this thing of, well, I can come up with my own products and it will just, you know, go really well, really, really quickly. Like, it's a lot of graft and a lot of sacrifice, and I think that if you do end up going down the path of like starting a business, you've got to like be really, really up for it, have a lot of energy, and like just give it everything you've got to start with. But at the same time, I think I kind of said it already, but I do think that you cannot like keep going at that pace forever.
Yeah.
You've got to find time for yourself and like create that balance in your life, because otherwise it will eat you up.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on Getting to Grow.
It.
It's been so interesting learning all about Grubby and kind of the befores, how you got to where you guys are, and kind of the growth and the exciting cookbook.
Yeah.
Hopefully
that goes down well.
Definitely, I love a cookbook.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me.